You do that, you do that, you do that. It's no fun when you do a take and then have to go, so how'd I do? And it's not fun.
Good Night and Good Luck is a movie about news and television and journalism. Can I ask you your opinion about television in Italy? Do you watch news in television? Do you admire any particular anchorman? Do you have what's your opinion?
Well, I'm still trying to learn the language, so I'm having a little more and more difficult time learning the language. I haven't quite figured out how or what. Subtleties of understanding. The last thing you learn when you learn a language is the subtleties, the little things, the turning of the screw, the opinionation. Those are the things that those are the last things you can gather. So I mostly just watch it now, trying to understand what's going on. It's very similar to the States, though, I find, because you have this world of when fewer and fewer people own more and more stations, that what you do find is a lot of similarity in the news. A lot of the stuff I see looks like a lot of the news in the States. We've all made it look very, there's a lot of big chyrons up on top, and war in Iraq, and people missing, and it's all sort of flashed up a little bit. But that's happened everywhere, so I suppose that's what's necessary to get the news out there.
The movie is about a press who doesn't have to be afraid and to be free, obviously. What in this moment the TV journalism and the press has to say about the war to terrorism, in your opinion?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, in the United States, if you ask a tough question during a Bush administration press conference, which are rare, but if you ask a tough question, you're put in the back of the room and not allowed to ask another tough question. So the problem with that is that rather than holding their ground and saying, I'm going to keep asking that tough question, they back off. Well, that's not something we're used to in America. We're very good at being sort of, we had Watergate because of Woodward and Bernstein, not backing off. We're pretty good about staying at somebody on all sides. And by the way, it's brought down Clinton in many ways. So this isn't about Republican or Democrat. It's simply about how important those questions are to be asked. The New York Times, after the war, put an apology out in the paper and said we should have asked tougher questions. We made a mistake. Well, yes, they did, because they were the standard, and that's important. And if not the New York Times, then who? I did a show with Dan Rather, and I asked him why he wasn't asking the questions that he was talking to me about in the interview beforehand. And he said, because we can't. And I said, well, if you can't, then who can? So I find that there was a tremendous amount of being labeled unpatriotic, which is what I was labeled in my country. It was called a traitor on the front page of a magazine with my name on it, because I said, 6 months before a war broke out, that maybe there's some questions we need to ask. Not Saddam Hussein is a good guy, he isn't, but that's not the point. The point was there were many questions to be asked, and no one was asking them, and no one in the press was holding them to it and saying, answer these questions. And so that to me has been our great mistake, along with, we had a government who I think just panicked and did something dumb, but we didn't have a very solid press to attack them, and we usually do. But that's cyclical. It happens every 30 years. Everybody sort of chickens out for a minute, and then they come back.
Is there a link between Good Night and Good Luck and the other movie you were... Syriana?
No, except that it'll probably get me in more trouble than Good Night and Good Luck.
So it will be a dangerous year.
Yeah, it'll be good, fun, dangerous year. I love this film. It's the reason for it is sort of, in its purest form, is trying to put a face on all of the elements, trying to bring into light, not being able to categorize somebody as an evildoer, but say, let's understand how these things occur. Let's understand our involvement from the very beginning. Let's understand how innocently all of our involvement is. Let's understand how their involvement started, how a kid straps a bomb on his back. Go back to how far back and what were the elements that made him lose so much hope. So it's controversial, to say the least. But for us, it's a good thing because we want to open that discussion. Because I don't believe you can bomb ideologies out of people, or shoot ideologies out of people, or imprison ideologies out of people. I think you have to actually try and understand the ideology, and that's what the movie is. And it's not certainly not an attack on the American government. It is an attack on people who categorize things. It talks about corruption. Well, corruption isn't Republican or Democrat. It happens everywhere. It's an attack on oil consumption and oil